Well, hello once again, fellow Star Trek fans. This video is going to be a conclusion to the build that we did for the AMT Star Trek The Next Generation USS Enterprise with fiber optic lights. If you want, and check out the unboxing to see what the kit came with. I did a whole series on this kit from the unboxing all the way through to the final stages of the instructions. You can see the box art shows you what it includes, and this was an interesting build because, well, when you build the Enterprise, a lot of the times you would build the saucer section, the nacelles, and then you would add them to the secondary hull. But what this what this kit had you do was you started from the base and you worked your way up. So you would do the bottom sections, put the electronics in, and then add the top sections. And for me anyway, I had a hard time lining it up. It didn't line up as good as it would be if it was separate and clamped. Anyway, my model building skills aren't the best, but that's the issues that I had with it. And as far as the fiber optics are concerned, what fiber optics are they're picture small pieces or strands of hair, except these are made out of plastic, clear plastic. And what happens is the light is put in the back and it travels through the strand and it goes to the other end. So when you have like a light bulb, you can run a bunch of strands off it and you can actually light a really large section. So you don't really need a ton of light. So with this model, let's see, there was one light in the primary hull. There was one light in the secondary hull that did all the windows. There was a light bulb for the deflector dish, and there were 6 in each Bassard collector. So the Bassard collectors had the most lights in it. I think a much easier way to do it is the clear version. And by the way, it's the same mold as this kit. The Polar Lights has the clear edition where you can just paint it, and then you can either drill through the windows or you can kind of scratch or remove the paint where the windows are, and it would be much easier because you could make the light much brighter with an LED strip. But anyway, this was for the time. This was a really cool model, and I had wanted to build it the way the instructions intended. The only modification I really made on this model was I put the impulse engines on the saucer section. I lit them. I thought it would be pretty cool, and for some reason they had the plastic colored blue for the impulse engines, and we know it's red, so what I did was I painted them. And that's really the only thing I did to change the model. When it comes to the power pack, I glued everything, and then I hot glued everything into place to make sure it would be sturdy and it would last. I did the same thing with the hot glue under the base for the feed, for the jack, the power jack. And, well, enough talking. Let me show you guys what she looks like. Let's put the box back in the background, and let's bring her forward. You can see. Now the instructions had called to put little feet, to cut part of the tree and put little feet on the base, and we can understand now because it won't interfere with the wire. So let's give you a little tour of the Enterprise D. I decided that when I was going to do the painting, now I had gotten this paint, I was looking for the color of the Enterprise, and it's kind of like a gray blue kind of color, and I had seen this color on Amazon, and it was actually called chalky paint. And what it does is it goes on really smooth, almost like velvet, and it's water soluble, and I used a brush. Now I had used the paint gun for most of my models. Well, my advanced modeling, I would use the paint gun. But with this one, I really like the color, But when I had got it in the mail, it was a little bit darker than I thought it would be, than it was in the picture. But I ended up using it anyway, and I figure I would clear coat the whole thing to kind of seal it in. So that's what I did, and I painted the whole thing with a brush, and I made sure that there were going to be no brush marks or clumps or anything like that when it comes to the paint job. Now, the detail on the ship, the escape pods, at first I wasn't going to color them in. Even on the box, they don't really put much emphasis on the escape pods. But when I started doing the Eagle Moss Enterprise, you really notice the escape pods, and they look great, and it really brings it really makes the ship stand out. The more detail, the better. So I figured, well, you know what, I should paint the escape pods. So what I ended up doing was I painted them all by hand. There was no stencil or anything that I used, and you can tell because they're really not even. It's when you see them all together, it looks decent, but when you go and you look at them individually, they're not quite even. And I painted them all with a brush by hand. And then what I did was I wanted to get the phaser arrays, and again, on the model, on the finished model, they don't really emphasize the phaser arrays on the model kit. But when you look at the video of the Enterprise, you can see it's clearly defined. Now, because the paint was so dark, I wanted it to stick out. And if I'd have just put it dark gray, you wouldn't really notice that the phaser array was there. So what I did was I painted it black. And I used acrylic paint for the phaser array. And again, I painted it by hand, so that's why it's not the most even of paint jobs. And then I wanted to emphasize all the windows. And again, the ones on the model kit that are emphasized are the ones that are lit. And you don't have enough cable to light as many as the box shows. So what I did was I took a marker, permanent marker with a fine tip, and I went and I put all the windows in. You can see. And they smudged a little bit because when I put them on the paint, they look really good. But then when I put the clear coat on, I guess the clear coat kind of smudged it just a bit. So, but all in all, I think it came out, well, relatively respectful. And when it comes to the sides, I didn't realize that there would be indentations going around. I neglected to realize that there was a gap that surrounds the primary hull. And what I had done was, you could still see the silver. So I had to touch up as best as I could around the perimeter to make it black on the inside and have that color of the ship on the outside. And again, it's not the most professional of paint jobs, but I think all in all, considering my skills, I think the ship came out relatively good. And to give you a preview of the underneath, you can see I did the same thing underneath with the escape pods as well as the phaser arrays. And the decals were actually held in place and sealed with the clear coat. You can see the deflector dish. And the base, the instructions called for the base to be painted flat black. But having collected the all the Playmates through the years, you know, I really like the gold and the silver. The gold badge like they wear on their uniforms. And I decided to do the base in gold and silver, and I'm happy with the way it came out. I think it looks really good. And then even the feet were painted. So I'm happy with the way the base came out. And that was the first part of the build that we had done of the ship, was the base. And then we moved on to the secondary hull. Let me move the ship around. I'll show you the secondary hull. You can see the deflector dish. and the escape pods that are underneath the secondary hull. Go around to the nacelle. This would be the port nacelle. And you could see there was a time where we had to actually dig a trench, 4 trenches in all for the wires. And what I neglected, I didn't pay attention to the instructions because they had wanted you to strip off the insulation, and it would make it easier to put the wires into the channels, but I neglected to do that. And you can see there, if you look closely, you can see where the channels are. I tried to fill it in with the putty and paint, but you can still see them. So you can see them clearly visible, but then when you change the angle, it's funny how they tend to disappear. But those were like towards the beginning of the build. And we have the 2 phaser arrays on the aft end. And let's see, there are phasers underneath the nacelle pylons. You can see the Bussard collectors. So let's turn the ship around to the starboard side. Try to get the same picture like what's on the box. The nacelles were the last part of the model kit that we had put together. And there were 6 bulbs in each. Now, because this kit was from the 90s, it was an older kit, and when it comes to the lights, you could really feel the age because these lights really throw a lot of heat. You wouldn't think so. The ones on their own, not necessarily would throw a lot of heat, but the ones that are grouped together, remember there are 6 in each Bussard collector. So that was getting a little bit warm. You can see, again, with the impulse engines that I had wanted to tell you guys about. We turn the ship around and look at the aft end of the ship. You can see the dorsal hull, and again the windows that got kind of smudged when I had done the clear coat. You got the impulse engines in the back, and you've got the impulse engines up on the saucer section, and you've got the phaser arrays, and then you get down to the back end of the ship. And how she looks when she's going away. Again, we got the nacelles. Looking nice. And again, the ship lights up. We got the power pack in. It's all hooked up. I've got the Duracells, and let's go ahead. I'm going to put the lights off, and then we'll light her up. Okay, so we put the lights out, and it's been kind of a rainy day here in New England, so hopefully it'll be dark enough where you can really get a chance to see the lights and how cool they're going to look. So let's go ahead and flip the switch on the power box, and she springs to life. You can see the deflector dish. It was actually all blue, and then the instructions had called for putting part of it red. You can see the areas that are red. You can see the windows and the dorsal hull that we had done. Now, because the filaments for the fiber optics were so old, a lot of them, when you would bend them, they would tend to snap. So there are some of the windows that should be lit, but they're not, and that's the reason, because, well, it's so old, and getting them all into they kind of get channeled into a small cup where the light bulb is, and the light actually travels through. But if they break, there's no way for the light to get to the windows, and that's what happened to a couple of them. You can see the dorsal hull. We got all the light leaks covered up. You can see the bottom of the primary hull. Again, there are lights here and there. Some of the filaments or the fibers broke. and it'd be so much in order to make this model today. Of course, the lighted version would be much better. And if you want to do this version, you can still make it awesome. You can drill out the windows, and then you can put light strips or the brighter LEDs in. But like I said, I had wanted to make it true to the instructions, with the exception I did of the impulse engines, and I'll show you guys those in a minute. You can see the underside of the primary hull. And yes, there are a lot of mistakes in this kit, and my modeling skills, although I think they have gotten better from the days when I first started, I'm still learning. And again, all the mistakes that I did with this kit, you can look at them and not do them on yours. You can avoid my mistakes. So, but all in all, I think it came out pretty cool. She's the Enterprise. You can see the lights on the top section of the primary hull. A lot of them more prominent than the bottom. They're still there, but they're harder to see. You can see on top there are much more windows. And I used the clear coat is actually reflective. It's glossy. And if you look at some of the video of the Enterprise, you can actually see where she's like reflecting. So she's kind of glossy. So that's why I had no issue doing that. You can see as we go into the bridge and B and C decks, the lights, you can see the shuttle bay in the back. And we'll circle around to the registration numbers on the front of the ship. So let's turn her around and I'll show you guys the impulse engines. And the lights that I used a long time ago, I had done the fiber optic AMT Enterprise incident model kit. And again, they use low voltage lights that go in to that model. And I had extra lights. So what I did was I had two of them. So I was actually able to run these and feed off the bulb, off the main power supply in the primary hull, and light the impulse engines, because I thought it looks better like that. And then I painted them red because they had blue clear plastic, and it just, to me anyway, it just didn't go. And for some reason, there's a hot spot showing up on the starboard impulse engine that's not showing up on the port. And I'm not sure why, because when you look at it with your eyes, it looks fine. They're perfectly even, but for some reason there's a hot spot in the video, and I'm not sure why. You can see the dorsal hull, or the saucer pylon, the lights that are on it, that are just below the shuttle bay 2 and 3 doors. And you got the impulse engines at the bottom that connect to the secondary hull. And you have the nacelles. And the Bussard collectors up front. Let's see, we can show you guys the Bussard collectors going down to the back of the ship, the aft end, and make it look like she's kind of like the credits for Star Trek The Next Generation, where you see her kind of flying away from you and go into warp. The Enterprise D she's a beauty. She's my second favorite Enterprise. Of course, the original 1701 is my heart. And I consider the refit the same ship. I absolutely adore the refit. I think that's the most beautiful spaceship on the screen. And I'm still working on the Star Trek The Motion Picture 1/350 scale Enterprise refit. I'm in the process of doing the nacelles. And I apologize it's taking so long for that. but I'm having problems with the paint masks. They don't stay on the nacelles. They don't stay on. They jump off, and you got to be in the right frame of mind when you do the paint masks, because it's so time consuming. But that's another video. This video is for the Enterprise D from AMT with fiber optics. Let's turn her around. That's a nice shot of her. And incidentally, they probably wouldn't use the impulse engines on the primary hull and the impulse engines on a secondary hull while using the warp drive, obviously. They wouldn't be using them all at once. But it does look nice lit up. And if you want to get more technical, if you want to add more lights to make it more screen accurate, there are flashing lights on the ends of the Bassard collectors, and there are lights towards the aft end of the ship. There actually are lights, let's see. They got to be, are there lights on the port and starboard top of the saucer section like there are on the refit and the other ships? I'm sure there are. And of course there's the blinking light. That's just after the bridge. That would be there. But all in all, I think she looks pretty good. That's, like I said, I like that shot of her. Let's bring her around. Very nice. Now I painted all the parts of the ship, including the impulse engines on the primary hull. What I did not paint were the clear parts for the Bassard collector and the warp drive, warp nacelles. The only thing I put on those was actually clear coat when we finished off the model. Let's bring her back around. So my friends, this is the finished version of the AMT Ertl Star Trek The Next Generation U.S.S. Enterprise with fiber optic lights. Looking pretty good. And what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to have a little bit of fun with her and do some green screen. And we'll see how that comes out. Okay, my friends, and that is the Star Trek The Next Generation U.S.S. Enterprise NCC-1701-D. I hope you enjoyed this little series. I hope you enjoyed watching as I enjoyed making the model, going through all the steps. I just love these old kits, you know, especially the fiber optic ones and the lit kits. I've shown you this one. I've shown you the fiber optic Enterprise Incident Kit. that one I made and it just came out terrible, so I would like to redo that. So I'll probably do it a little bit better, because I think my skills as a modeler got just a little bit better. And I'd like to right the ship on that one. What else? I also did the Enterprise, the 25th anniversary with the lights and the sound. And again, that model is just horrible. I look at the video and it's embarrassing. I'd like to redo that. What other the light kits? The model kits with the lighting. I do have the U.S.S. Yamaguchi from AMT, and I'll be doing a video on that soon to show you guys what that's all about. And Enterprise models, we have the Technic, one with the lights and the sound, and that's going to be a fun build. And just the Enterprise in particular. Now, I was thinking about doing a long box build, because the Bussard collectors and the S951 kit, I believe it's S951-250, where they have the lighted Bussard collectors in a kit, and I was thinking about doing a build and showing you guys what that kit would look like from the box and according to the instructions. So that would be a fun build. But as for this one, this is for the Enterprise D. And speaking of the Enterprise D, I'm still waiting for the Eagle Moss shipment. This writing is the 24th of September, 2021. And I have not gotten a shipment from Eagle Moss since June. I think it was June 12th. And every time I inquire, they say it's not in stock. So I'm waiting on that. I didn't give up on the Eagle Moss Build the Enterprise D, but I just haven't gotten anything to show you guys yet. And as soon as that comes in, absolutely, I will do an unboxing and show you everything that comes with it, and then we'll build it. But this was for the AMT version of the Enterprise D. And as usual, I thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys again real soon in another video.